nice. Hey? Alright. Let us begin. Hello everyone, and welcome to my Leica M11 street photo walk video. I was out and about with Chris Meets Chris in Chinatown, Vancouver with the Leica M11 as well as the Leica M10-R. Thank you so much, Camera West and Leica Store San Francisco. I have this on a long-term loan since I was in Germany. I got lots of videos to still edit, but they let me borrow this on a long-term loan, use it in Germany, love this camera, and as well as when I got back to Vancouver, and then Leica USA, thank you so much Kiran and the rest of the team, Nathan, for sending this out to me, the M11, and just had a great time.
It looked right at me like you just did like kind of Wes Anderson style. Not like show it a little bit this way because the fire hydrants in there. Yeah.
The M10R was the first M to go
to the moon.
This video is not going to be about specs and numbers. I shot another video sort of talking about the differences between these two cameras, but in this video it's more about just the shooting pleasure of the Leica M system. And as well, I'm not sure how much of it we showed in the video that we shot, but also my M7. I love this camera. This shot my Hong Kong neon project with this. I've traveled the world with this camera. With the 28, that's my favorite focal length using on the Leica M. Shot with this in Germany as well. Shot with this here, the M11. This is the black chrome, so it is using an aluminum top, so it is nice and light, but this M10R, it's it's all brass top and bottom, does have the camera craft grip as well as the retro photo York brass shutter, so it's just a beautiful looking camera. And when you're out and about shooting with any Leica M, these are competent cameras. It's like an air-cooled Porsche 911. It's a real sports car. You can definitely race with it and keep up with modern sports cars depending on what you're doing. Obviously, it's not the same as a brand new water-cooled 911 sports car, but these things definitely, the optics are as good, if not better, than a lot of other manufacturers. And having a 35mm f1.4 and a lens this small, I mean, no other full-frame manufacturer can make a lens quite like this with this kind of quality, because there's no autofocus to have to deal with. And so as you will see in the video, as I'm out and about walking around, you don't need autofocus for some things. My buddy Jason Roman, Stock Easy, he shoots at f1.4, f2 on the streets. He sort of scale focuses. He knows where he wants people to hit, at a certain point when he's at a certain f-stop, and he could just hit it because that's his primary camera. And he does, actual work shoots with his Leica M's, even though he has an SL. And I'm sure he has different reasons why he shoots an M over an SL over a Q. And so if you want to use this as a professional tool, you can. I use my Fujifilm cameras. Like right now I'm shooting on the X-T4 and I need autofocus for some things, but I come from the generation where autofocus didn't exist. And so, think of all the great photos that were taken by Magnum photographers, or just photojournalists in general. Some of my favorite photographers, Fred Herzog, Greg Girard, Henri Cartier-Bresson, they didn't use autofocus. It didn't exist at the time. And so to say that you can't, I think people have gotten so used to technology in their cameras that they become heavily reliant on it. And that's all right if you're doing jobs, I guess, but I not only like the art of photography, because you could have an artist's eye and use an iPhone and take fantastic photos, but know nothing about ISO, aperture, or shutter speed. It's just, you just kind of have that eye. And there's other people that understand the craft of photography, so they can shoot with a large format camera, medium format, they can load their own film, but they might not have an artist's eye. They just enjoy just the ritual of loading film and shooting film and just saying that they took it and they're completely happy with it. They don't need to be famous photographers. I believe in, for myself, being able to be a competent photographer with a great eye, but as well as understanding the craft of photography and enjoying the craft of photography. And with the Leicas, you get to do that. You get to manually focus, you get to really engage with the camera. You're actually mechanically moving lens elements, so you are focusing and using this focusing patch. And as well, you set your shutter speed, and if you're not, this has an electronic shutter on the M11, the M10-R doesn't, so either you use MD filters or you stop down. You use all these different ways to capture your images, working within the limits of what you have. And yeah, I can use an autofocus camera, I can use my iPhone and get certain shots that would be a lot easier to grab if I had autofocus and auto exposure and all those things. I mean, this has auto exposure, this has live view on it. So the M11 is a modern iteration from the original M3 film camera, came out in 1954. So we're approaching like the 70th year of the Leica M. Changes on a classic like this, it can't be too radical, but this is probably one of the most radical upgrades for Leica M, even though in something like the Sony world, where there's a new camera every 6 months, it's like, ooh, this camera is thinner. Oh, this camera has a new battery system. It doesn't seem that big, but when you have a 70-year legacy, a 70-year history of both form and function, there's only so much you can, like Leica says, they're not interested in making the M into an autofocus system, because that's what helps keep this compact and reasonably lightweight for what you're getting. But the thing is, people love these because they're manual focused, because you get to kind of play with it, right? You get to engage with it. You're not just shooting one-handed without looking. You need to look, you need to focus, you need to be able to figure out what you're trying to get. And yeah, you could chimp a little bit and look at what you shot or do live view. And with the M10-R, you could do that. With the M11, you could do that. You can get like the MD and can't do that because there's not even a screen on the back. But the overall shooting experience with a Leica M system, it doesn't matter if you have an M11, M10-R, M10P, M240, M246, M9, M8. It doesn't matter, even going all the way back to the film Leica M7. When I'm going from film to digital, and that's kind of what I did when I was in Germany, I was shooting with the film Leica M7 and then the M10R, swapping lenses back and forth, and the way that I shoot was basically the same. I didn't have to change the way I was shooting. So a lot of people who say they love the process of shooting film, well, I get that it's not exactly the same, but you get a similar feel and you get a certain flow shooting with the rangefinder. Well, going from film to digital, it was just a great way of shooting when I was in Germany. And maybe the total volume of photos are less than if I was shooting with an autofocus, auto everything camera, but I don't really care because I'm shooting for the pleasure of it, and that's kind of why I love photography. And so I had a great time shooting with the M11. Thank you so much, Chris, for walking around with me. We went to a couple of cafes, so we went out, walked around, took some shots, went, sat down, talked about photography, and talked about watches, talked about sneakers, and our likes and dislikes when it comes to food and drink.
This is wrong. You're not supposed to really use honey in your Hong Kong some milk tea. You're supposed to use refined sugar, but I don't want you wasting your honey.
And then we went to a sneaker shop and looked at some sneakers. And again, that kind of plays into sort of, the pleasure of wearing something that is beautiful, but as well as functional, right? So you can pretty much, shoes don't need to look cool. And really, if you just got a black pair of shoes and they're functional, why do you care what they look like? And some people are that way, right? Some people said, look, I just want to wear a pair of Skechers and I'm good. They don't need to be legit. They don't need to be on point. As long as they're comfortable, I'm happy, and that's fine. But for me, I love the functionality of sneakers, and I think they should be functional first, depending on what you're doing, especially if you're running or hiking or something like that. But as well, the style, the history of where the shoe came from, like Stan Smith, Superstars, Air Force Ones, you know, those things mean a lot to me. And then sort of like it's poetry. It's poetry on my feet, my clothes, what I wear expresses how I feel. The watches I wear, they all express something about me. And shooting with the Leica, other than the history of the camera, it's an expression of my fashion sense, an expression of me understanding the historicity of these cameras, and yet they're able to still capture beautiful photos. And knowing the greats that use these cameras to capture wonderful photos, it just kind of plays into the whole poetry of when I'm out and about and shooting. And so thank you so much, Leica USA, for sending me the M11. Unfortunately, I have to ship it back, but I still have the Leica M10-R. And for those of you that are wondering, should you get an M10-R or an M11? The M10-R, I think the value in it is finding one used, because these two are still selling the same price. Leica told me when I was in Germany, they have no intention of dropping the price of the M10-R, and so for the same price, M11 is the way to go. But finding these used, the M10, M10P, M10R, the M10R, I think right now at Camera West and Leica Store San Francisco, I think it's like $6,000. So you save $3,000 from buying a new one, and as well as the availability of accessories like this camera craft grip, as well as like tons of used batteries or chargers or third-party options. There's a lot more options with the Leica M10 body because it's been around for, I don't know, what, 5 or 6 years. So there's a lot of third-party accessories for it. So I would recommend, you know, looking at used prices. So I'll leave the link down below for Camera West as well as Leica Store San Francisco to find a minty copy of an M10R, either in silver or black. Still has the brass top and bottom plate, so it's very classic Leica M. And a little bit more fiddly, right? I mean, you get to play with it a little bit more because you have to take the bottom plate off. Some people aren't huge fans of it. I wasn't, but with this camera craft grip, I do have access to the battery and the memory card slot without having to take that bottom plate on. Also, the Arca Swiss type connector, so I can just put this straight on to my tripod. So thank you again, Chris, for shooting with me, and let me know down below if you guys like that type of video. I'll do more, just kind of walking around with whatever cameras I have. But for now, it's gonna be the Leica M10R pretty much as I'm out and about in Vancouver, as well as my Leica M7, because I am testing out some new film from Camera Film Photo, the Kiki Pan, so that's what's loaded in here right now. So I'm having fun shooting with that, and I gotta ship this back to Leica. So goodbye, Leica M11. We will perhaps run into each other again sometime soon in the near future. We'll talk to you soon. Happy shooting. Man, that's such a nice... Hey? All right. Peace.